mother's genes. Rav Ramin, family, friends, Matty, asked me to write Matty. Well, this has been both mortifying and preposterous. You will forgive me if I'm not overflowing with gratitude for that which is finally drawing to a conclusion. Rather than thank yous, I choose to share this ludicrous platform with the following people. Sarah Freund, Cindy Mann, Sarah Stark, Yossi Azaria, Leela Gittler, Beth Saar, Anna Whitefield, Lynn Farber, Abby Goldberg, Michael Smigel, and Marie Wolfe made up the dinner committee for this evening. They are all to be commended for their dedication and commitment to raising funds for this worthy cause. Yeah. A committee showing real commitment, and if it were up to me, I would have had them all committed weeks ago. Avi Sussman, father and husband to assorted Sus men and Sus women, I'm glad that you had this platform tonight. I've seen every member of the Sus clan roll their eyes at your jokes, and I admire your obstinate courage that compels you to keep expanding your audience with such little encouragement. Back when we first started the Minyan, Tova Kestenbaum was vital in shaping the format of the service, choosing which tefillot to focus on and how to pace the davening. That we changed very little over 14 years is a testament to how great her ideas were to begin with. I had many volunteer helpers. Ariel Brownstein stands out in my memory. He will forever be known as the teenager because that's how the children referred to him. Hey, where's the teenager? Who's that funny looking new kid sitting next to the teenager? Ariel knew the tefillot and the tunes better than I did, and I upped my game observing his quiet charisma. Sometimes after the children graduated, they would return and help out. They were all spectacular. Daphne Chiswick allowed me to call on her for a long time as substitute me on weeks when I was away. Meeting her as a third grade Ola Chadasha and then standing witness under a chuppah has been one of the immense wonders of this experience. The Minyan had many different homes. We started in the Gittler's basement on Achad Ha'am. We moved to the baths, then to a caravan in Ariel Playground, and then back to the baths. If I turned up early enough, I got to sample whatever Lisa Bath was making for lunch, which was never less than 8 themed courses and a choice of soup. When the community made the move into this building, the various Va'adot were kind enough to provide a space for us to daven every week. In fact, every Va'ad since I began has been fully committed to youth programming. We always had a space in Sidurim to daven from. No one ever told us off for singing too loudly or finishing too late. Perhaps we don't acknowledge enough when things are done right or handled correctly, but every child who ever davened with me was able to take for granted that there was somewhere in shul where they could express themselves freely and noisily without rancor or recrimination. Being able to take things for granted does not happen by accident. Several worked behind the scenes, ensuring that I always had what I needed, that the air conditioning was working, there was grape juice for Kiddush, and much more. Cindy, Mindy, Rifki, Chani, Rina, Hadassah, and Shoshana may sound to you like the least enticing Spice Girls tribute band imaginable. But to me, they represented order and a number to call in a panic when I forgot something important. I also want to acknowledge Jeffrey Cohen, who on hearing that I would be davening with the 1st to 4th graders, arranged for me to hear Kriyat Torah and daven first with the minyan of mostly high school graduates. Jeffrey learned very early on there was no need to wait for me before starting Hashkama, and he's given me my fair share of mitzvahs, although a lot of them have been Hagba. Just a side note, what's the deal with that? Why do they give Hagba to the fat guy? Check it out next time you're in shul. Hagba, fat guy, Lila, skinny little fellow. What's up with that? With your permission, I would like to tell you a little bit about how I came to be here. When I was 6 or 7 years old, our neighbor came to my parents and asked if she could bring me to shul on Shabbat. Tanya was a Girl Guide or Girl Scout, and she took me to shul if she took me to shul for 6 consecutive weeks, she was going to get a badge. She couldn't take my friend Natalie because Natalie was her sister and so she didn't count, so she took me. Our shul had a children's service run by volunteer mums and dads, and I remember very clearly standing at the back and Tanya telling me that now was the Shemona Esrei and I mustn't talk until it was over. And after what seemed like about 14 and a half hours of not talking, I remember asking her fairly loudly if I was allowed to talk yet. and even as the words came out of my mouth, I understood the paradox in the question. It was an intellectual epiphany, and it took place at Shabbos morning children's service. I continued attending the children's service even after Tanya got her badge. I made friends with Jeremy, who was in my class at school, and Adrian, who was in class with Rochelle about 10 years before I met her. Jeremy, Adrian, and I would compete to lead the minyan, sing the loudest, talk the most. Sometime later, the shul organised a Shabbaton away, where away meant about 10 minutes from home, and I shared a room with Jeremy and Adrian, and I don't believe we slept all night. I don't think it was the first time I'd been away, but it was the first time that I kept Shabbat. After children's service, we graduated to the intermediate service. Jeremy and Adrian and I did more davening, and we used to get up early on Sunday morning and pick up the bagels for the after davening breakfast for the pre-bar mitzvah crowd. Then summer of '82, we were all bar mitzvah, me, then Jeremy, then Adrian. And we met up again in the youth service, where there was a whole lot more davening and Kriyat Torah every week, and we dove right in, davening and laning each week, and on the Chagim and Yomim Naraim, and then giving out the davening and laning each week, and on the Chagim and Yomim Naraim. And then we got married, me, then Jeremy, then Adrian, and then we had kids of our own, me, then Jeremy, then Adrian. So when I was 6 or 7 years old, I was taken to a children's service where I davened alongside people who became my friends. And 40 years later, I sat outside a minyan in that same shul on Friday night, waiting to be called in and comforted, and Jeremy sat right there with me. And then when I stood and spoke at the Azkara in Renana for the Shloshim, Adrian was sitting right there in front of me. I'm under no illusion about the insignificance of my individual contribution to youth programming, but that does not mean I do not recognize the vital significance of having youth programming and of supporting it financially and through volunteerism. Our job is to facilitate the lifetime bonds our children are building to friends, to community, to tefillah, and to Yiddishkeit. Every donation made this evening contributes to that process. I am here today because of that process. Our children will be here tomorrow because of your donations. I don't remember a lot of Gemara, for which there is a logical, if not glaringly obvious, explanation. But I remember a prototypical debate between Hillel and Shammai about lighting candles on Hanukkah. Shammai says that we should start on the first day with 8 and then light 1 fewer each day, like, says Shammai, the bullets of the festival. Hard to imagine why that phrase stayed in my mind. Hillel says we should go the other way around. I know that various aspects of this evening, not least the selection of your honoree, have caused various eyebrows to be raised. I can only offer the same rationale that Hillel brings. Ma'alin b'kodesh ve'ein mo'ilin. In holy things, and what could be more sanctified than the continued success of this holy kehillah in this holy country? In holy things we go up and never down. If my selection allows future honorees to look back down at the first and say, well, this is both mortifying and preposterous, but at least I'm not that guy, then it was all worth it. So, I think we're done here. As promised, I got through the whole thing without expressing any gratitude whatsoever. I know I found it all a bit silly. My children have not been shy about telling me what they think of this honour. My wife has perfected an embarrassed shrug. My mum is here tonight. A couple of years ago, Daisy and I flew to London, where she was honoured because she was retiring after completing 41 years as Brown Owl in charge of the Brownie Girl Guides, aged 7 to 11. So you can imagine what she thinks of my 14 years long service. But there was one person in the entire world who would have expressed unequivocal pleasure over this evening. He welcomed any affirmation of his unbudgeable belief that his children were the greatest that ever lived. And so on his behalf, thank you.